let's start in that messy place. Like, the hurricane hits. What did you do?
Hit it! That's what I'm talking about. Wait!
Okay, now, from the beginning.
Hit it, boys.
Welcome to Higher Ed Pulse, your no-fluff guide to artificial intelligence in higher ed. I'm Mallory Willsea, bringing nearly 20 years of edtech and marketing expertise straight to your earbuds. Higher ed leaders are expected to master AI overnight, but let's be real, no one has time to sift through every headline, hot take, or research report. That's why every Monday, I'll break down what actually matters. Fast, clear, and to the point. Want to sound like the smartest person in the room at your next team meeting? You're in the right place. Let's dive in. Welcome back to Higher Ed Pulse. On today's episode, you'll hear a special conversation I recorded live at the North Carolina Prima Conference. I sat down with Ben Rickert, Director of Marketing and Communications at Blue Ridge Community College, to reflect on the one-year anniversary of Hurricane Helene. Ben was on the front lines, balancing the personal impact on his family with the responsibility of leading emergency communications for his college. The lessons are important, everything from what it feels like to put crisis training into practice to how community colleges became the backbone of recovery efforts. Let's dive into my conversation with Ben. Ben, I gotta start by asking you to tell us a fun story about your name, because you were just talking to me about before we hit record. And I mean, let's talk Brad Pitt. Why not?
Oh, that's a great question. And thanks for the opportunity, Mallory. I'm already having fun. So you'll see on the record when I represent the college or anything professional, I'll use my full first name, which is Benjamin. And the reason is because if you Google my full name, nickname, Ben Rickert, you will in fact get Brad Pitt, as you just said. And I'm a great fan of Mr. Pitt, but the reason is that he chose my name, or somebody chose his name, this name for him, during The Big Short. Remember back in the 2008 financial crisis? His character name was Ben Rickert. I don't know why. Maybe they just thought I was agreeable, but I'm thinking maybe I'll start using Brad Pitt on the record. Maybe that's the way to go.
That, or you got to sue them, right? Like you were telling me SEO has been ruined for you, and I do apologize for that. But in this new world of AI, you might be able to reclaim your name. I'm just saying, if you get to those AI sources first, you might be able to reclaim Ben Rickert.
Yeah, I like how you think. Maybe we could get Mr. Pitt on the line one of these days. Maybe he could do a co-show with us, maybe buy us lunch. I'd be good with that.
Well, we are actually here to chat about something that's truly a bit more serious. Ben had a front seat to all of the challenges that last year's Hurricane Helene caused in North Carolina and in his community specifically. Ben let me know that he was on the front lines when it came to managing those emergency communications. But of course, the tenets of crisis communication is something that as marketing communication leaders, we should all know and learn, something we've all been trained on. But, when the time comes to flip the switch and put that training into practice, wow, what a career moment. But one of those moments we don't often want. So Ben and I are going to dig into that a little bit. But first, Ben, for someone who's listening who's not super familiar with Blue Ridge, can you tell us a little bit more about the school that you work for?
Yeah, sure, Mallory. Blue Ridge Community College is in Flat Rock, the Hendersonville area of North Carolina, in western North Carolina. We also have a campus in Brevard, and we have a campus location in downtown Hendersonville around our health sciences. We serve about 11,500 students, 11,500 students each year, and that's between our traditional degree-seeking students as well as those pursuing workforce training of many different kinds for our community. We really are an economic driver for western North Carolina. Blue Ridge is specifically, we add about $128 million of value to our economy each year with what we produce. There was a study by MC Burning Glass a few years ago where they just studied the entire North Carolina Community College system, and it was, I believe, $19.3 billion of economic value that the 58 community colleges of North Carolina are adding each year. So it's incredible. And what we see when we look into a crisis like this is that value it is still there. It just looks a little differently. We have a pivot that we make between being primarily educators to being responders. But at the same time, many of those responders, as you'll see in this conversation, are actually people that are trained in our community college system.
Which truly is incredible and has stuck with me since we have been prepping for this conversation. So let's take a look at this, kind of across the board. Obviously, the hurricane had a personal impact to you, right? But then you also serve a community, a college community that is relying on you to be the front line of those emergency communications. But you're dealing with that alongside not having access to the basic human needs of, water and power and even internet. So let's start in that messy place. Like the hurricane hits, what did you do?
And it's a question also of the few days leading up to that, because we are in this pre-crisis state as soon as we hear that there's a hurricane coming. In Western North Carolina, we're used to storms. We have flooding. Our creeks will rise. If you have property or anything, a vehicle next to the creek, you have to be careful when there's going to be heavy rain. That's not unusual. And so when we hear that these hurricanes are hitting the coast, largely we're not panicking. And so there was a moment just a couple of days out from the storm when the National Weather Service for the first time used the word catastrophic on the record. And so when the National Weather Service says catastrophic, those of us public information officers, the hair on our neck stands up. What is this? What's going to happen? I've never heard that word in this way in this place that we live. We've had other types of things that we respond to, wildfires and whatnot that we do need to alert our college community about. But this was a new one. So what do you do? And so our college decided, one, let's tell people about preparedness. Let's let people know what type of skills that they're going to need, what type of supplies you're going to need, things like fill your bathtub with water. You may have heard these for other types of catastrophes. Things like have fresh batteries. Do you have a weather radio? Charge your devices, things like that. And we worked closely with our campus police department to put out a statement really to our entire campus community. It still felt unlikely to really be needed, honestly. And so I think it was a little shocking when that turned out to be a rather haunting message. Even now, nearly a year later, we look at that message a little differently. It hits differently. Wow, it was spot on. I met with my team. It turned out we were going to close college on that day that the storm was hitting, and so I'm very grateful we made that decision because the roads were impassable, obviously, after the storm hit. But we did go ahead and close the college. My team went home with some printouts of our emergency plan, with our laptops, our phones. So to jump back to your question, now you're getting into the crisis phase of the experience. So overnight, Helene hits, and creeks were already starting to flood, and then the hurricane hit. So, woke up at about 6 o'clock that morning and went down because the power was off. Well, actually, let me correct that. I don't think I slept much that night, but I was in bed and my daughter was sleeping and my wife. And so I thought, well, I could get the power back on. And so I walked down to the basement. There's no hope with that electrical panel. Went back up. I thought I would check in 20 minutes, and I did. But by the time I went back down that next 20 minutes, the basement was filling quickly with water. So we'd finally reached that point where even though I live halfway up a mountain, the soil was saturated enough, rising higher and higher from all of that heavy rain. Finally, the water was just coming in, and so this was obviously pretty alarming. We spent the next 12 hours bailing water with buckets out the back of the house, trying to keep it from rising. It was very surreal. We couldn't leave the neighborhood anymore, and so you start to pull out your phone and think, well, how are my parents? And you start wanting to call family members, and that's when we realized we were in a blackout. And I have not experienced a blackout like this in this profession or in my life ever. There was no phone, no internet, there were no radio stations, there was no power. You couldn't leave the neighborhood, so everything was conversation. What's happening? Fortunately, I did have a weather radio that I could turn on, but for a period of time, even that wasn't going to pick up anything because nobody had power to retransmit those messages. So it was quite just the mental game at that moment. Like, what are we experiencing here? Because we still didn't know what was happening outside of our immediate street. People started to pull out chainsaws and start trying to get the streets cleared. By the time you could get out to the main roads, you realized all the main roads were blocked too by trees and power lines. The highways were blocked. And then my mind is starting to go back to, okay, well, I probably should check in with work, let them know that, with the college, and let them know that I'm here. But how do I do that? And so one of the first things that I needed to do was find a place that I could communicate. It actually took about 2 days before I was able to get out of the neighborhood, and there was a FEMA base setting up at a nearby mall. So I drove there. Fortunately, I had a hotspot on my cell phone, and I got about 1 bar of 4G. For the first time in 2 days, it was glorious. It was emotional. Wow, I can call somebody. So I called our emergency team at the college, and we started to formulate our plan. And I knew that this was going to be the only place that I would be able to talk to them. There was no connectivity at my home, or water or power. There was no gas station, by the way, that was on either. If you have no power, gas pumps don't work. They can't slide your card. So whatever gas you had in your car was how you would charge your cell phone or your laptop if you had an adapter. So I had to really conserve that power, thinking, okay, well, I don't know what's coming next, but I know that we need to be communicating with our stakeholders, or people will, if they're in a different situation, try to get in their car and drive to the college, or who knows what. Eventually we'll want them to do that, but we have to check in and let them know. So that was what was going on with me kind of personally in the immediate, response to this to this crisis. And we started to formulate a plan, and pretty soon we established that, okay, we can get into the office when the highways are open. Eventually that happened after several days. And then we were able to, by this point we had already sent several emergency messages to our students and whatnot. We were able to get into the boardroom at our college. This was surreal, and I know this is a long answer to your question, but an emotional experience, to walk into that boardroom and see our facilities people, our president, my coworkers, and the people who also were the initial responders to this on behalf of our college. We know that we are at the center of a community as a community college, and people depend on us, not just for their education, but we build a network. We network our companies, we network our industries, our students, our alumni, all the institutions that make our community work. We contribute to their workforce, and we lean on each other. And we, at this point, we're making that transition from educators into essentially community helpers in whatever way that could be. So the next thing that unfolded over that first week was that search and rescue crews essentially occupied our campus. We still had water down in the Hendersonville area. It was a different water source than the North Fork Reservoir that supplies where I live, and so we were able to have first responders, a FEMA base erected within just a few days right there in the parking lot, and we had helicopters taking off all day long and landing and deploying out into the community to basically rescue people who were in landslide situations or flood situations, off their roofs, out of mudslides. The stories, I won't try to repeat them all, but they were just incredible to hear. And in the midst of this, we're trying to figure out, okay, how do we slowly bring the college online? How do we get internet working? How do we serve the people around us? We started to get donations. That was a really interesting, we're still in this critical crisis response phase. We are far from recovery in this phase. We're first week or two. But we had, by the time the highway started to open up and get cleared, other community colleges started bringing tractor trailers full of food and clothing. This is fall, remember, so it can be chilly in October in the mountains. And so then we started to stockpile them in one of our areas. And that's where I could get on our emergency system and start texting all our students, hey, if you have a need, if you can safely get to campus, we have food for you. If you have children, we have children's clothes for you. If you have, if you need water, it was incredible the amount of donations that came in that we were able to then redistribute to our employees and students.
Here's a quick word from our sponsor. Southeast Missouri State University needed to launch more targeted campaigns faster, yet they were bogged down by manual campaign builds, slow approvals, and vendor overload. With Element 451, they eliminated 5 vendor tools and gained marketing superpowers in one platform. They saw a 13% increase in applications, processed applications within 2 days, and achieved 33 to 35% email open rates. The impact: personalized, automated campaigns running at scale without the drag. Ready to turn your next campaign around in hours, not weeks? Try an agent today at element451.com/agents. They ever make a movie about this, I think Brad Pitt has another Ben Rickert to play, because what a story. I mean, just the incredible loss. But I think you're right. I think anyone, and I've lived through a hurricane as well, I think anyone who's lived through a really serious weather event has these clear memories, these core memories of what it is like to experience this loss at scale. And I think, the empathy that you've displayed in the story, but like, you do think like, okay, someone else has it worse than me, but this is really hard. It's just, there's so many emotions. And then to be at the forefront of having to lead communications to an important population, like, that is just so much pressure. I think about how, the tenet of crisis communication is you protect the victim. And you do that by communicating with them as quickly, as truthfully, and as transparently as you possibly can. But gosh, how the heck do you do that when you literally have no means of communication? So I'm curious, for a listener who hopefully never has to go through this, but may be in meetings on their campuses, in preparation for a future crisis, right? What are some of the lessons you learned in all of this that you would say, like, I would have never thought this, but this, from these experiences, like, it may sound simple, but write this one down because it matters. And it may not be obvious, or it may be very obvious, but it had an impact.
Absolutely. Those of us in the communications field, we gather regularly, we meet with one another, we get around a table and we invent scenarios of horrible things we hope will never happen and how we'll respond. We have a certain personality wiring that makes us want to be ready for those situations. And probably personally in some ways we are, but that doesn't take away the mental toll. Just you have only so much energy in a day to do things. But there's also, and don't take this wrong, there's nothing good about a tragedy. We never want to see a tragedy, but maybe it's adrenaline, but there's some sort of drive that wakes up when you're facing this sort of adversity. When I have to traverse power lines to get to the mall to talk to my president at a certain time so we don't miss each other, so that we can communicate where the resources are to students, there's something that makes me alive. And I go, this is it. This is how I'm going to help people today. And I think a lot of people talked about feeling powerless and like, what do I do to help? And, in some ways we would go to our neighbors and carry their water. In some ways we would go out in the community and do cleanup efforts. And it was wonderful to participate and see our neighbors participate in these things. But also as a communicator, it's okay to tell yourself and remember, this is how I'm helping. I'm going to give some energy here and I'm going to give it all. But this is one way that, and it is my primary way right now to protect lives, to protect their property, to keep them safe, to get them the resources we need. And as we do that, it's as okay to remember, sometimes I'm not okay. My mental state at some moments, I needed to talk to somebody. I need to talk to my neighbor, my wife. I might just be alone, be quiet for a little bit. But we have to take care of ourselves physically. We have to find water and food. Years ago, I did triathlon, and really in a race, what you find is that you hit that limit and you go, I ran out of energy because a little while ago I didn't make a decision to take a sip of water or eat a thing or whatever it is, and you hit this wall. You can't do it forever. You will fall over, and you have to pace yourself in the same way like it's an athletic event when you are in this sort of response and communications role in a crisis. So that was hard, but I had to remind myself of that as we went and remind the people around me, here, have this granola bar. Hey, how are you? Are you okay? I noticed you're covered in mud at this meeting. Do you want to talk about that before we start this meeting about what we need to do for people? So that's one of the first things. Take care of yourself. Be okay with the fact that this is your way to make a difference. There's a lot of ways to make a difference. It's okay that this is yours. Know your audience. it became so apparent that when we would send a message, and this was true not only in those first couple of weeks, but for months, it really hit differently depending on the situation that they were in. It kind of helped that my area experienced, some impacts more than others, not as much as others, but nonetheless, there were people who I worked with who had fully recovered weeks prior, whereas I didn't have water that was potable for 50-something days. The power, I think, was out about 3 weeks, internet for weeks past that. And so it kind of gave me a little more empathy about where the people were that were in some of these communities that were still floating in lakes or who had lost homes entirely. I didn't. I was very fortunate. I had my vehicle, very fortunate. But how do I write this message about billing or parking procedures that are different because FEMA's on our campus, or how to invite somebody to come get food or water, or we had to take a moment and stop with every message and really think about our audience and think, there's a wide range of people who are going to see this message. How are they going to experience it? Is it going to get the action from them that's going to be best for them? Is it going to build our relationship? And so that is what was just consistently in the front. Has this, imagine the person who had a death in the family. Imagine a person who's rebuilding their home. Do they have a computer to receive this message? Do they have a car to do the thing you're asking them to do? We have to really think along a lot of lines to communicate in these ways. Another takeaway, this is super simple, 2 super simple ones actually. Have a hotspot on your phone. This may be true for anybody, whether you're a communicator or not, but that hotspot, oh my goodness, it was the only way to access email or eventually our emergency plans that in some cases hadn't been printed out. I didn't have a copy of our emergency plan for the college, and so I needed to get that off of Google Drive at the time, but I couldn't access that until I had an internet connection. Another one would be as a communications person, build really good relationships with your radio stations now. I don't know if you watch disaster movies or zombie movies, and just to make light of this just for a moment, there's always a radio station involved, right? And there's kind of a reason for that. They can transmit through disaster scenarios with more resilience than a lot of other formats. And so there were a couple of radio stations that were really key in helping Blue Ridge Community College to get its emergency messaging out to our community. And they had some generators, and they had a tower, and they were able to be off the main grid but still broadcast to people. Those are the people in a weather emergency that we need to be really close with now. We need to build our relationship. They need to be used to seeing our messages about small things like maybe a snowstorm or some ice on the road, so that when something big happens, they're ready and they've practiced and we know each other. And this last one is not as much of a lesson learned as it is an observation, similar to a point I made earlier. As we're going through this process, watching the helicopters land and rescue people, watching the ambulances go down the road, the police directing traffic, the people with utility trucks trying to put phone lines back up, people starting to assess bridges. You start to get into the recovery period. Now we have skilled tradespersons, we have construction, we have roofers, we have HVAC, we have electricians of many kinds, and these engineers, all of these people, these infrastructure workers and professionals, in large part are community college graduates. So the people who rescued us, the people who have helped us to put our homes back together in my case, the people who have helped to rebuild our parks, our roads, our businesses downtown so that people are welcome to come back now and have dinner and enjoy time with us. This all is here because in large part our community colleges trained the people who did it. And that has been just a reassuring observation for me for so long now, knowing that this is the right work to do. Community colleges change lives, education, higher ed in general. You're going to improve a person's life when you give them the ability to provide for themselves, to improve their career. But in our specific case, we're training the majority of people who are going to help you when you need that help the most. That feeds my soul when I get up every morning. And it means something new this year than it did last year.
Ben, you just started to touch upon some of the things that you did once you entered recovery mode, right? And we are about a year after this hurricane hit. So talk to us for a couple minutes about what has the last year looked like post hurricane, when operations resume as normal, and where are you guys at today in 2025 with all this?
It's a great question. As of this moment, next week will be the 1-year anniversary of Hurricane Helene coming through Western North Carolina, and we're in a very different place. If you come to our downtowns, in large part, you may not notice, and that's by design. We want this to be welcoming and clean. Hospitality, tourism drives so much of our economy here. We really want to continue that and keep our businesses alive. Make this a great place for you to come visit. You get a little bit farther from our downtowns and to our smaller communities, and there's a lot more work to do. And so we're still continuing to just see a large call from our community college to produce skilled trades, in particular professionals. And so those people that we discussed, the HVAC, the AC, the roofers. Imagine all the things that could happen to a home or to a business that could require multiple disciplines to repair or rebuild entirely. So we are building just numerous scholarships and partnerships and getting grants from the National Center for Construction Education and Research, and CCER, the Lowe's Foundation, from like the actual Lowe's store that you could go shop for your supplies. They have stepped up and done amazing things to help us with our skilled trades training. Right now, we've been offering this actually for much of this year, a free course for anyone who wants to retool their career and move into construction. And it's about a 6-week crash course. It's free because it's funded through NCCER, and they get a free $500 toolkit at the end, and the goal is that they can walk out of that class and step onto a construction site and rebuild Western North Carolina. There are funds that we've gotten through our General Assembly in North Carolina that we have been able to repurpose into tuition grants for our students. We call it the Build Your Future Grant, using that word build, because we are all rebuilding right now in some way. And so this is a tuition grant where many of our students this fall and moving into spring 26 will also be able to come to school and have that funded. And so we're trying to get the word out as much as we can locally. Hey, education is the stepping stone toward many of these community goals that we have. Our president, Dr. Leatherwood, she's been incredible in tying our community college to our government and to our many other local organizations. And under her leadership, we have hosted Governor Josh Stein to our college this week, and he held the Governor's Advisory Committee for Western North Carolina Recovery at Blue Ridge this past Monday, where he also announced his plans to ask Congress for $13.5 billion for additional Helene recovery. I know what my house cost to get fixed this year, and how many houses add up to that $13.5 billion. It's an incredible thing to think about. So moving forward, it's really about partnership. It's about doing what we do best as a community college and higher ed. We teach you to succeed in your career, to make a difference, to care, and to be able to go and serve our local businesses. And that not only gives you an income and a means to take care of your family during this time that maybe you lost your job or needed to change it, but it also puts you in a role where you can literally rebuild the things that fell apart due to this storm. So that's what we're taking seriously. This fall feels a lot more normal than last fall, but there's just always that added, distribution of grants and projects and this new class, and it's our joy to do these things. But we're very still in the phase where we're having conversations about Helene on a daily basis.
Thank goodness for more or less the return to normalcy here. But it is, it's just struck me as I was listening to you how important community colleges are to this nation. And I think there's, no other institution type that can be as nimble and innovative as community colleges. And this story, I think, really just highlights all the reasons why. Ben, I appreciate you taking time out of the busy Prima schedule to sit down and share these experiences with me and the Pulse listeners. Where can folks find you if they want to connect with you after this episode?
Absolutely. And thank you. It's really been a pleasure to be able to share our journey and our story. And I love to connect with our other higher education leaders and yourself as well. And I am on LinkedIn. That's really my primary way to do so. Look for Benjamin, my full first name, Rickert. Again, you're not looking for Mr. Pitt, although I have high regard for him. But I would love to connect with you. And if you have any questions or any of your listeners have questions about how they might be thinking about preparing for these sorts of situations, I know that myself and our other public information officers in Western North Carolina would love to assist.
Incredible. Well, thank you again, Ben. And folks, we'll catch you on the next episode of The Pulse. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to the Higher Ed Pulse. The show is a proud member of the Enrollify Network, home to Higher Ed's largest collection of podcasts. Enrollify is where higher ed goes to grow. So be sure to check out our other podcasts, webinars, video clips, blogs, and more. Visit Enrollify.org and subscribe for all the latest details and content drops directly to your inbox. Enrollify is brought to you by Element 451, the digital workforce platform for higher ed. Learn more at element451.com.